Hey, good morning and afternoon, everybody. This is Rob from Europe. Thank you very much for taking the time attending our second PlayFab webinar. Another big thank you for those that attended last month's session where Kristen introduced LiveOps and PlayFab. Feedback was really positive on that, so thank you very much for your attendance. I'm also very pleased to introduce Brent Elmer, who will be presenting today. Brent is our Senior Program Manager at PlayFab. In today's presentation, he'll be explaining more about PlayFab Insights, which is a new data and analytics solution purpose-built for gaming. PlayFab Insights combines the capabilities of a data stack together with deep integration of PlayFab services, so you can turn those insights into action in real time. Brent's going to explain how those capabilities are designed to support live game teams of all sizes through all stages of development. Following that, there'll be a Q&A session, which you can access via the Q&A tab on the call control bar. But do feel free to ask questions during the presentation. For anything that Brent can't answer during that, we'll keep track of it, and hopefully he can respond at the end. So without further ado, over to you, Brent, and thank you very much again.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Rob. I appreciate the introduction, and it is a pleasure to be with everyone this morning or this afternoon or evening, wherever this might find you. I'm super excited to be here and speaking about a topic that's so near and dear to my heart, PlayFab Insights, an upcoming analytics and data offering by PlayFab. So without further ado, I guess we'll jump into it as we go here. I'm happy for this to be a little bit informal, so if there are questions that come up as we go, I'm happy to address them along the way as well, in addition to the Q&A that we'll hold at the end. Okay, so the way I'm going to approach this is first to lay out a little bit about how PlayFab's vision, what PlayFab's vision looks like. Then we're going to talk about the role that data and analytics play in that vision, and then we're going to get into the features and capabilities that we have in scope for the PlayFab Insights feature. So to start us off, just a quick look at sort of the state of the game development industry today. So as I'm sure everybody on the call knows, games are a big deal today. They are growing. Today there are roughly 2 billion gamers in the world, and last year games generated over $100 billion in revenue, and we're seeing this growth continue. But obviously games have been through a lot of change to get to this state, and what games are means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. As connectivity of our devices has increased, we've seen a huge amount of change in what a game is and what it means. First, we had games as a product, and here in this era, it was a single item that a player could had to purchase before they could play. Typically, this required special hardware, so it kind of made this a big event. Because of that, there was a strong emphasis on advertising and marketing that was needed to generate a demand for that product before it went to release. And also in this era, it was rare for a developer to have any kind of opportunity to interact with their players. Instead, they typically tended to create their game in isolation and then deliver it as a static object to a set of customers. After that, as connectivity increased and as the internet became more mainstream, we saw a change in the nature of games, which we call games as a service, right? So what we saw in this era was digital distribution, where we created a direct purchase relationship between the game dev and the player. And we saw some of the games that were best positioned to take advantage of this were social and mobile platforms because of the continuous connectivity. This era was really about acquisition of players, and it popularized the free-to-play business model as a result. But now what we are seeing in PlayFab is that we're moving past this games as a service era, and something new is really starting to begin in the phase of games. And we like to call that in PlayFab, games as community. So I'm going to talk a little about what we mean by that. So if we take a look at the top grossing games worldwide, so you can see this games as a community theme emerging here. So if you look at these past 2 years, one of the things that's going to stand out here is just how much overlap there is between these. And 90% of the games on these two lists are the same. And the reason for that is because these game developers continue to build and manage communities of players to keep their games relevant year over year. And what we see as we look across that set of games is that they are all employing very similar types of strategies. And this is exactly where PlayFab is looking to support. And we call this phenomenon, or these collection of strategies that they employ, LiveOps. In other words, the design and the process that we follow to continuously engage a community of players who cares deeply about the game. So this term is probably familiar. You've perhaps heard several possible definitions of what LiveOps is. So I want to talk a little about what LiveOps means to us. Because this new order is really about the community of players are engaged around the game, then all of the ways that that community interacts with the product become relevant. And so there's all these verbs that players are doing with our products now. They're buying continuously on an ongoing basis. They're playing, they're competing with one another, they're competing on leaderboards, they're chatting with other players in the game world and out on forums. They're watching the game has become an equal contributor to the experience of the game as playing it. And then obviously gamers have become accustomed to being able to create in the game worlds that they care about as well. And all along this way, there are many touch points now between the developer of the game and the player throughout the entire player journey, even starting before the game's release. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. So PlayFab really is the set of services that are needed for a game developer to be able to deliver on these experiences that a community has come to expect, and they're core to this LiveOps strategy. And so that's kind of what you see here with PlayFab, with the services. And so as players take these actions or participate in these communities, they generate activity. And that activity comes in to these services as a set of input signals. And then what we collect, all of those signals collected in a single place, is what we refer to as PlayFab Insights. And so this is the term you're going to hear me use throughout, but this is basically the place we gather all of these input signals and the services data. And then we're able to take what's in Insights and feed it back into the player's experiences to take intelligent actions and to really drive engagement that's tailored to an individual. And you'll often hear James Wertzman, who's the original founder of PlayFab, refer to this as the segment of one, where we can really tailor that action or that experience to that individual. Now, the goal of PlayFab is to do all of this in real time from a single platform. And so we get to PlayFab Insights, which you can think of as a complete back-end platform for data and analytics. So let's unpack that statement a little bit. So what we find, and as we've gone and done a lot of customer research, we find that there's a very common, simple question that many of our developers are asking. And this question is more or less, how are my players behaving? This is both in-game and around the game, right? And that on the surface is a very straightforward question, but as you unpack what you need to do to answer that, there's a set of domains that emerge here. So you bring in all of the aspects of what is conventionally thought of as a data warehouse. You're also looking at the reporting sort of discipline space. These are dashboards and reports and analytics on top of that structured data. And then there's this new sort of trend emerging in customer data platforms, which is about building a unified profile or a cohesive view of one person's activity. And then, of course, all of this can be enriched by machine learning. And so there's different types of profiles and roles within our teams that tend to interact with each of these different systems. But as we answer this one single question, it really spans all of these disciplines, right? And then as you start to think about this, each of these domain areas really starts to subdivide into a bunch of functional tasks, right? And so if we look at sort of the classic data warehouse space, we're looking at instrumentation of events. How do we get them through into our back end? Where are we storing them and for how long? What kind of computer are we putting against them? How do we orchestrate any kind of transform jobs or processing of the data? And then if we look at reporting, now we're facing questions like what reports should I build? What are the metrics that I should produce? How do I keep that suite of reports up to date? How do I look at the funnels and user journeys in my product? And there's a whole set of products that are sort of tailored around this experience as well. Then we talked a little bit about unified data platform, but here we're looking at like a single profile, a single cohesive view of all of my players' activities, regardless of whether it's happening in my game or outside. We're talking about segmenting our users in meaningful ways and then taking actions on them, whether those actions are marketing actions or in-game actions, and we really are seeing that boundary start to blur. And then obviously the machine learning domain can be even much more extensive than what I've represented here. Now, all of these capabilities in the modern era, we're in 2019, and it's definitely possible to go collect a set of tools across Azure, AWS, and other providers that do actually. So if you go to you can go collect a set of these tools and go put together a solution that will address each of these functional areas. You absolutely, it's possible, and there's many teams who are out there who are doing this already today. As you do, you have to answer a number of questions, and this is a little detailed here, but these are implementation decisions that every single developer who sets up this solution has to work through. And it's just the tip of the iceberg, right? There's many more questions like this. And so there's a lot of cognitive load and complexity. There's a lot of time. There's a lot of investment from these teams to go figure out what's the right solution. And what we find as we look at this problem space is that 80 to 90% of these solutions end up being common across all game developers, because more or less the scenario tends to be the same, right? And so rather than and actually here's a couple of examples of things that are available in Azure and AWS that kind of address certain aspects of this process. Again, it becomes like a toolbox where you pull the drawer out and you have to find the right tool for the right job on your journey to sort of try to build the bench, right? And so what PlayFab Insights mission is to really stitch together this landscape in a way that's purpose-built for gaming and integrated with the services side of game development. And we're able to do that not because we are building all of these technologies ourselves, quite the opposite, but because we're heavily leveraging under the hood the best of breed in each of the offerings that are available on the market today, and then removing that complexity from each individual developer having to work it through. So this is the PlayFab Insights vision. Now, let's talk about sort of the big areas within PlayFab Insights, and we're going to go into each of these in the next section deeply, and I'll show you what I mean by each. But sort of fundamentally, the four major verbs within PlayFab Insights are: first, we need to get the data to a place where we have it available. It's well structured. Then we're going to be working on the data. So this is where we're shaping it, we're querying it, we're trying to understand, draw learnings, extract learnings from it. And then, of course, along the way, we need to be managing that data. We need to be able to manage the scale. We need to right size it for our business or the state of our game's life cycle. We need to make sure that we're controlling our costs to be proportional to where we're at, and then being able to set up the compliance and access controls that we need to govern that data. And then all of this, and this is where the PlayFab differentiator comes into play, is that it enables us to take those real-time actions that I mentioned earlier using the PlayFab services that are already integrated with your game for anyone using PlayFab. Okay, so awesome. This is kind of the frame for PlayFab Insights. There are more sections, and there are many more feature areas that are lighting up on PlayFab that will dovetail into this. I'm going to save those for a future session, but maybe we'll make a couple of notes on them as we get to the end of this. So let's go ahead and jump into this first area here. So let's look at what I mean when I say get data. Okay, so the first really here is about getting your game's telemetry and your services events into Insights. And so you're able to send, so all of the service calls that you make on PlayFab using any of our APIs are already going to generate event data, and that data is going to land in Insights automatically. In addition, any game telemetry that you want to send, so these are descriptive events, they can be very verbose, that describe moments in the player's experience that you want to record. These can be sent into PlayFab Insights as well using one of two APIs that we have. And so there's two real pathways for getting data in right now. The first of these is what we call PlayStream. Now, PlayStream is one of the beloved features of PlayFab, and one of the reasons for its success. PlayStream is basically a real-time rules processor and an actions system. And so it basically says whenever an incoming event occurs, we can look at it, we can analyze some aspect of its payload, we can decide whether it's going to, let's say, cause a player to enter a segment or exit a segment that I've defined based on a rule, and then I can take some kind of action from that. And so this is focused on super low latency applications. These can be done in near real time, sub 200 millisecond latency. And so we have all that richness when you want it. Now, of course, with that comes a certain amount of processing cost. And so when we're really talking about high throughput, high volume, very chatty events, then we have a second path available, which is a batch ingestion option. And so basically this reduces the cost of event ingestion at a high scale. It allows us to scale way up in terms of the event count. Today we have several titles that are sending us 1,500 or plus events per second, and we're scaling this capacity at all times. So we're seeing this go up. And then you can send you can send potentially quite large events with a 10K payload limit. And then our methods also support options around batching, and you can based on payload size and time. And so there's really an option that you have the right option available to be able to get your data into Insights. Now, the second piece of the data that we acquire here is from external services. So there are, for many of our game teams partners, we hear a very common set of services that they have, that they're using to support their game. These might be things like Zuora for billing or Zendesk for support issues. It's advertising to see how my ads performance is going, or maybe I have a website component to my game, such as my forums, and so I'm probably using Google Analytics for that. Any of these things represent steps in that player's interaction with my product, whether or not it's happening in my game. And so having that data available and alongside the other data is critical to us. And so we are in the process of developing the connectors to be able to send, to be able to import by basically inputting your account information for any of these services. And then we can set up a live real-time connection that will both ingest all the historical data and continue and maintain a live real-time connection where this data is landing in Insights alongside your other data. And it will be conformed so that you can see a unified view of a single player across any of the touch points that they're interacting with your game in. And then we have another feature that we're very close to releasing in public preview, which we call the Xbox Data Add-on. So in this case, because we obviously are part of Microsoft now, we have a deep connection with the Xbox gaming business. And we've built a set of connectors that will take any of the usage, purchase, Game Pass, and other critical information about what players are doing either on console, PC, or mobile, anywhere that the Xbox Live login is used. And we're creating processed facts, well-structured facts from these that are descriptive of that user's engagement with the product and putting that into PlayFab Insights as well. And the interesting thing about this particular offering is that it doesn't require the game developer to have adopted the PlayFab SDK. In fact, anyone who is shipping a game on Xbox can get access to this data simply by going to playfab.com, creating a studio and a title, and then from within there turning on this add-on using their credentials that they use to publish the game on Xbox, their partner center credentials. And so this is a new offering and represents an area where we as Microsoft and as the gaming business in Microsoft can continue to serve rich and enriched data that has historically been somewhat difficult to get at to developers of all scales. And then the fourth area here is really a set of data we call process data, which is anything that we PlayFab have through the features that we offer on the PlayFab platform shaped in a specific way. So I'll show you an example of this real quick. So I'm going to bounce over here to PlayFab for a moment, and I'm going to share some data from a partner. So I'm going to share a couple of partner data views here, and I want to just mention that in all cases, these partners have given their permission for us to be able to share this in this conversation. So here's an example. So this is a partner of ours at Venture Capitalist. We have a view on PlayFab that lets you see what we call trends. These are some common metrics that are used, and this is only the beginning of what we plan to ship here, but that are used across game development. And so all of the data that gets processed by us for this purpose will be added to the Insights data warehouse by default, so that it's available for you to do further analysis on than what you can see in this UX. There's another example where let's come. So in here we have a players feature, which lets you find any individual by an identifier, by their linked account, display name, login, first login date, etc. But you'll be able to see, so if I click on one of these players, I can see information about first login, last login, when their account was created, what country they last logged in from, display name. But in addition, I have a history of all the purchases they might have made on my platform. I can see any of the statistics that as a, how many highest stage. So these are custom statistics that as a developer on PlayFab you can define. So like what's the player's league ranking, league wins and losses, etc. So all of this player profile data will also be hosted inside the PlayFab Insights database that you as a developer have access to, so that you can have basically a state table of your players rather than having to build that view up from the events themselves, further saving you data engineering time. Okay, so this is more or less the landscape of how data gets into Insights. So now I'm going to move into the second piece here, which is how do we work on the data itself. So one of the key features that we have when we talk about work on data is this, what we call Explorer. Now this is currently available in private preview. In the next week or two, we're going to be moving this into a public preview. But basically, Explorer gives you the ability to go query and interact with any of the data that's in the Insights warehouse. And there's two modes to this. The first one is what we call basic. Now this is geared towards, for anyone who's familiar with PlayFab today, this is more similar to what we call event history. But the basic mode is aimed at people who are not familiar with writing syntax, don't want to write full query expressions, but need a way to go be able to explore that data. And this focuses on being able to build that up. So I'll show you an example of this here. So, and I apologize, this image is a little blurry, but basically what you see is in this builder panel, you can put an expression or a statement together where you pick an event by its name. From a drop-down, select a property of that event if you choose to. You can apply several different operators on that event, whether you want to say greater than, less than, equal to, etc. And then you can add multiple levels of filter here. One of the things that we want to do with this is also be able to save off some of these expressions that you might write in here or in the advanced mode as a definition of a metric on your platform. So these would be things like if you as a team come up with your own definition of, let's say, average revenue per paying user, then that can be saved as a query expression, and then that's abstracted such that anyone on your team can now come in and pick that metric by name from a dropdown and include it in an expression they're using, so that you internally have your own definition and everyone is referring to that commonly as they go build these. You can group by, sum by, etc. Select custom date ranges and then generate a set of visualizations alongside here. Now any of these could be saved so that you could then share with a team member so that everyone on the team is looking at a common view. This is our basic experience, but then for anyone who wants to go to the data itself, and certainly analysts on the team, you'll have full query expression. And you can use the power under the hood, the power of Azure's Data Explorer to be able to generate visualizations, etc. So I'll show you how this looks in a live application here. So I'll show you a couple examples. So let's see. Here, I'm looking at this is a work in progress version of our Explorer Advanced feature. And then what you're seeing here is on the left side, a set of all of the titles that are under this studio. So if you wanted, you could do cross-title analysis from here as well, because you can reference data in any of these different databases. In this case, the title I'm actually working on is this one. And here I can see all of the tables within this title. So the one I'm going to interact with here for the purpose of this demo is this events.all table. So I can expand this and I can see the column, the structure, the columns in this table. Now the events.all table is our landing, it's our staging area. So every event that is incoming gets added to this events.all under a common schema. And so you can reference any of them by name, any event by name from this, or easily author queries that look at more than one event under this. So just to show you, let me see. So in this case, I'm just saying, I want to look at all of the events that are occurring in events.all, and I want to get an idea of the distributions between them. So like what are people doing most frequently? Let me try a refresh here. Okay. And then what I've told it to do, so I'm just looking at events that happened in the past day. I want to group them. I want to give me a count back of each by name, and then I'm just going to ask for a pie chart. And you'll see in a second here. Here we go. So right here on the page, I get a view of all of my events. I can see nav actions are the highest. If I wanted to see get a clearer picture of what's behind nav actions, I could just turn that one off. And this is going to dynamically update. So now I can see task completes are my second most common occurrence in here. If I turn that off again, I can keep drilling down this way from this live visualization. Let me show you another one. So let's say that I had a question around how many players are logging into my game by platform. And I want to just group those and just look at, rather than by time, I want to look at the last 30 days and see my logins across different platforms. So very quickly you can see I'm getting back a view of how many Android, iOS, Steam, and PSN players I have. We can do some even cooler stuff here. So let me pop over to a second example. Here we go. So in this case, I'm going to say, let's just kind of walk through a couple of steps of this query. So I'm going to say under events.all, I want to look at this full name level plate. So I'm just looking for the level plate event. So I run this, and you can see I'm getting back some sample rows, which let me see what the shape of the data I'm working with here is. In this case, I'm going to head over to the event data column right here. Now, if I want to know kind of what's in this structure, this is kind of where the meat of this event is. I can just double click, and that'll let me see different things under here. So I can see, like, I've got event ID, title ID, I've got times one, stats, whether it was a win or not. There's also this level ID. Here we go. So I'm going to take this as an example. And let's say that I want to know just how many times yesterday was level 2 played overall. So here what I've done is the full name is that same event, and then I've reached into the JSON payload and asked for this level ID equals 2. I'm just going to get a count back. Okay, so here I can see 1,755,000 times yesterday this level was played, which is pretty cool. But now I want to know, like, okay, how many players played level 2 yesterday? Yeah, so here's my how many distinct players played level 2 yesterday. So in this case, I've just added a D count, and I'm taking this entity ID, which is the player. So it's going to give me a distinct count of players who had at least one play session with level 2. And so you can see of those 1,700,000, I had 127,000 distinct players. So I can tell now that a lot of players are playing this level a lot of times. So now I might say, okay, well, how many times are they playing each, and get a view of this. So here I'm just going to add to this account by entity ID. So I want to get one row back per entity per player who played this, and then it's going to show me the count of plays for each one of those. I can take this even further, and I could generate a column graph like what we saw earlier, grouped but binned by the number of plays per player. Okay, so here you go. So what am I seeing here? I'm going to sort this now. So this is my highest number of plays. So this is all those 127,000 players grouped by, along with the count of times they played the level. So the highest player was 271 instances. You can see how that falls off down here. So you can very quickly start to get an idea of just how rich I can make these queries. And for any of these queries that I generate, I can then save it and share it to another team member. So I can send you a link and you can go look at the same data. You can even tweak the query yourself if you want to. So we're pretty excited about just how rich this in-game manager experience is around querying, thanks to Explorer. Okay, so now let's look at some of the other ways we can work on the data. Okay, yeah, so, and here's just a quick example of some of the types of queries that are possible either in Basic or in Explorer. What's the most popular item being bought by our hardcore players? How many players watched a daily reward ad on day 0 after an update, etc. So we can really start to get at this question of what are our players doing in the game. Okay, so now another scenario that is very common is many of our customers ask about how they can visualize the data that's in Insights using some of these top tier data visualization packages, right? So if you want to go create rich custom visualizations, say you have an analytics team, that analytics team is going to build a set of dashboards. Those are going to be the dashboards that are up on monitors around the office. This type of scenario is something that we also are planning to support in Insights, so that you can basically, from any of these services that you might have a subscription to, or even a free license, you can go in and just add the credentials for the database that you use on Insights, and you'll be able to create a live link to that data where then you can do whatever you want with it. And actually, we have a case study on this, which I can send out as a follow-up along with any notes that Rob sends out. But basically, there's a partner that did this on during the GDC era, and we have some documentation in a GitHub repo on how they went about it. But this is something that's going to also be extremely easy from Insights. And then we talk about transform. So now let's say the team wants to set up, scheduled transform operations, ETLs. They want to do orchestration. This is also something that we'll make possible. So any of the capabilities that Azure has to be able to interact with what the PlayFab Insights backend technology is, which is under the hood, as I mentioned earlier, is Azure Data Explorer. So any of the APIs these Azure services have that interact with that will be possible for you to make use of as well. So basically, this means you'll create a subscription on Azure. In that subscription, you'll maybe set up, let's say, a blob storage account. And from that blob storage account, you can set up a copy to from PlayFab Insights, where you can put that data in a place in blob. And then, for example, from a blob storage account, you can attach Databricks compute cluster to the top of that. And then that would give you the ability to do Spark and, let's say, ML applications, for example. But also you could use things like Azure's Data Factory, which is an orchestration and scheduling agent, which would let you go set up jobs on top of your Insights data and then write back into it tables that you set up for that purpose. So in other words, the full power of Azure is available through anyone who has an account with Azure right against your Insights data. Okay, so that more or less covers the story for work on data. So now let's talk about the third big area here, manage data. So there's a couple aspects to this. The first one, obviously, is that game teams and games face the unique challenge where a title rapidly scales up sometimes, and then obviously can rapidly drop back down. And so having an infrastructure that's as agile as the business grows and shrinks is critical to us. And so basically, we are setting up through Game Manager easy controls for you to be able to set scale to meet the performance goals that you have as a team. So let's say you have a need for more concurrency, more concurrent jobs running, or you want to have more data in cache so that your queries are running much more quickly or responsively. These can be easily adjusted from a single performance-based slider. And that you can change regularly, and then you basically build for the amount of time that slider is set to any specific level. Of course, the first threshold within this Insights is free, and so you can set up a PlayFab account and start using Insights without having to pay anything. And then as your needs grow, you can start to scale this up. The other thing here is that the data itself is stored in an Azure Data Explorer's Azure blob. And so the ability to keep long-term historical data is there, and it's extremely cheap because blob storage prices are very low, extremely competitive with the industry as a whole. And then obviously it's up to you if you're starting to run a bunch of queries across that data, you're going to want to scale your performance metrics to be able to give you the responsiveness that you want. So that's the first aspect of managing the data. The second is really about how do I make sure that the right people have the right level of access. And so for this, again, this experience is managed through PlayFab's Game Manager. Today we already have a roles and permissions experience on PlayFab. And so Insights brings another set of options to this, where you can assign either globally to the Insights overall offering, or at the database or table level. You'll be able to control users and security groups, so that if you have a group of, if your team is big and you want to add all the analytics team to one, you can do that in bulk. And then as far as compliance, obviously we have in place on PlayFab all of the APIs needed for you to be able to manage your GDPR responsibilities, so that you can do delete, export, view, etc. And those are all available publicly. You can just set your implementation up either from a website or from the game client itself to support a delete request from a customer, and then that will trigger our GDPR APIs and go in and purge that data. Okay, so that's this is really more or less the meat of what I want to cover as far as the first iteration of what PlayFab Insights is. Now, obviously, as we look to the future, there's a lot of the real differentiators are going to start to be unlocked for us as we land this set of capabilities. And so now kind of looking ahead, and I mentioned this at the beginning, and I'll close with this idea at the end, but what really makes Insights special is that it lives in the same suite of services as all of the your actual game services that you use on PlayFab. And so some of the things we've talked about earlier, such as like this rules processor or being able to set up segment definitions through PlayFab, are going to be possible here. In fact, I'll show really quickly an example of this. So if I come over to one of our internal demo titles, you can see, for those who may not have seen this feature before, players, if I come into my players view, I can choose segments. And if I define a new segment, I can pick, so let's say this is my high experience purchasers. So in this case, I can say I'm going to pick, this gives me a set of parameters from the player's profile. I can pick a statistic value, and let's say this is, maybe, let's see, player level. So if this is my high experience group, maybe I'm going to say I want the player level to be greater than 10. And I want to know that they've purchased something. So I could say, in this case, value to date represents the amount of money that they've spent. Actually, we can do it here. Value to date in USD. So in this case, I want it to be greater than 0. This tells me that they've bought something with real money, right? So with that, I've now created a definition of a segment. I have a couple of things that I can do with that. I can do real-time actions. So I could say when a player enters this segment, I want to set up one of these possible actions. I could send them an email. I could grant them a virtual item. I could execute a cloud script. So this is basically the escape hatch for you as a developer to do any custom logic that you want to do. Let's say maybe I want to display a pop-up with a special offer for something in the store, and I want to put that set of behaviors together. Then I can author a cloud script for it and then go choose the function that I want to execute. So with PlayFab Insights, this segment and actions system is going to be one of the keys to basically connecting the data side of the house with the services side of the house. And the way that will work, and I'll show you a quick example here, is that basically any table or any property that's available in Insights can be used as an evaluation criteria for any segment definition you want. So let's say you've processed some of your data and generated your own segment definitions for your users based on some analysis you've done offline. Or maybe you've even gone into Databricks and generated some segment definitions and then fed those back into Insights. Now you can come into Insights and grab those as a parameter for a segment definition and then trigger actions on that basis. So really the sky is the limit in terms of what you're able to do here. This one is, this particular example shows a feature that we have, that we're close to being in private preview on, around a churn prediction score. And basically it says, you know, we do some analysis on the players nightly. Based on that, we assign a score, which is the probability that player will churn in the next X days. And then you can come into your segment definition and say, okay, I want to pick this likely to churn, and then choose what, you know, classification, high risk, medium risk, or low risk. And then based on that, I can set up any number of actions. And so this starts to just tease a little bit at how the service side of PlayFab will integrate with PlayFab Insights. Now, there's a couple of other topics that we didn't touch on, but they're upcoming and will be extremely relevant as well, such as A/B experimentation. So there's been a lot of investment in A/B experimentation in PlayFab. We're getting ready to announce and share details about the new version of A/B experimentation. And with that, there's scorecard calculations, so you can say, hey, what are the metrics that I want to move in a positive direction based on this test, or what is it that I'm actually evaluating in this test? And so those metrics then, basically the generation of those scorecards is also done through this PlayFab Insights experimentation. So that's, through the PlayFab Insights system. So we are very excited about what this represents. We're excited to save developers time. We're excited to unlock new capabilities that haven't been possible before. We're excited for all of the ways that we can then grow this base set of capabilities, including the ones that I've mentioned and others that we have in store that I'll hope to talk about in a future session. But I think with that, and then the final note here is that many of the things that I've mentioned are available in a private preview state. We are moving quickly towards a public preview, but where there's interest from anyone on the call, I'm certainly happy to get in touch and talk about giving you an early look at some of these capabilities through our private preview. So please just let me know. I believe Rob is going to share out some of the information, including my email, so that if you guys want to follow up, I'm happy to have any conversations. And even if it's feedback on the product direction, of course, we're always interested. So thank you so much for your time. And with that, I'll turn it over to any questions.
So Brent, I have a question from Josh. It says, for the intended goal of ingesting data from, example, Google Ads, Google Analytics, are you intending to also do, quote, user stitching on the website data?
Yes. So it depends on what you mean, Josh, by user stitching. But yes, the answer is yes. That as long as the source data has a key that we're able to join the user by, then we will be doing conforming of that dimension. If it's let's say, an unidentified browser user, then obviously in that one scenario, we won't be able to join that.
There's a follow-up here as well, saying, related to the same point again from Josh, what might it look like to ingest data from Delta DNA? Would that just require work to standardize event data they already store?
Good question. Yep. So yeah, Delta DNA, and I can't remember if I mentioned it on that slide, but yes. So we have been in talks about setting that connection up. There's no official committed plan, but it looks like it should be possible to basically bring in exactly what you said, their event data. So basically in Batch, bring in that historical event data and then have it in Insights. And if you need the live link, then that would be possible as well.
Cool. I think if anyone else has any questions, now is your time to put them into the Q&A tab. I think we're all good.
Music.
I think we're good. So Brent, thank you very much. Everyone else on the call, really appreciate your time today. It's fantastic that we've been able to do this. We'll get the recordings of the session shared as quickly as possible. Brent has kindly shared his email address for you guys. So it is brelme@microsoft.com. Of course, you've got hello PlayFab@microsoft.com as well if you need to get in touch generally. That's it for us. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, everybody. All right, take care.